안녕하세요. 그러면 마가복음 7장과 8장 읽도록 하겠습니다. 시작하겠습니다. Mark 7. And the Pharisees and some of the scribes gathered together to him when they had come from Jerusalem, and had seen that some of his disciples ate bread with common hands, that is, unwashed. For the Pharisees and all the Jews, unless they carefully wash their hands, do not eat, holding the tradition of the elders. And when they come from the marketplace, unless they wash themselves, they do not eat. And there are many other things which they have received to hold, the dipping of cups and pitchers and copper vessels. And the Pharisees and the scribes questioned him, "Why do your disciples not walk according to the tradition of the elders, but eat bread with common hands?"
And he said to them, "Well has Isaiah prophesied concerning you hypocrites, as it is written, 'This people honors me with their lips, but their heart stays far away from me. But in vain do they worship me, teaching as teachings the commandments of men. While leaving the commandment of God, you hold the tradition of men.' And he said to them, 'You nicely set aside the commandment of God that you may keep your tradition. For Moses said, honor your father and your mother, and he who speaks evil of father or mother, let him be put to death.'
But you say, if a man says to his father or his mother, whatever you would have been profited by me is now Corban, that is, a gift to God. Allow him to no longer do anything for his father or his mother. Thus you deprive the word of God of its authority by your tradition, which you have handed down, and many things similar to these you do." And he called the crowd to him again and said to them, "Hear me, all of you, and understand. There is nothing outside of a man which entering into him can defile him, but the things coming out of a man are the things which defile a man.
If anyone has ears to hear, let him hear." And when he entered into a house from the crowd, his disciples questioned him concerning the parable. And he said to them, "Are you also in the same manner without understanding? Do you not understand that everything that enters from outside into a man is not able to defile him, because it does not enter into his heart, but into the stomach and goes out into the drain? Is saying this, he made all foods clean. And he said, that which goes out of the man, that defiles the man.
For from within, out of the heart of men, proceed evil reasonings, fornications, thefts, murders, adulteries, covetousness, wickedness, deceit, licentiousness, envy, blasphemy, arrogance, foolishness. All these wicked things proceed from within and defile the man." And he rose up from there and went away into the borders of Tyre and Sidon. And entering into a house, he wanted no one to know about it, yet could not escape notice. But a woman whose little daughter had an unclean spirit heard about him, and immediately she came and fell at his feet.
Now the woman was a Greek, Syrophoenician by race, and she asked him to cast the demon out of her daughter. And he said to her, "First, let the children be satisfied, for it is not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the little dogs." And she answered and said to him, "Yes, Lord, but even the little dogs under the table eat of the little children's crumbs." And he said to her, because of this word, "Go, the demon has gone out of your daughter." And she ran away to her house and found the little child lying on the couch and the demon gone out.
And again he came out of the borders of Tyre and came down through Sidon to the Sea of Galilee in the midst of the borders of Decapolis. And they brought to him one who was deaf and spoke with difficulty, and they entreated him to lay his hand on him. And he took him aside from the crowd privately and put his fingers into his ears, and he spat and touched his tongue. And looking up to heaven,
he groaned and said to him, Ephphatha, that is, be opened. And immediately his ears were opened, and the bone on his tongue was released, and he spoke clearly.
And he charged them not to tell anyone, but the more he charged them, so much the more they proclaimed it. And they were utterly astounded, saying, He has done all things well. He makes both the deaf hear and the dumb speak.
In those days, since there was again a great crowd, and they did not have anything to eat, he called the disciples to him and said to them, I am moved with compassion for the crowd, because for 3 days now they have remained with me, and they do not have anything to eat. And if I send them away to their home hungry, they will faint on the way, and some of them have come from a distance. And his disciples answered him, Where will anyone be able to get enough to satisfy these people with bread here in this desolate place? And he asked them, How many loaves do you have? And they said 7.
And he charged the crowd to recline on the ground. And taking the 7 loaves, he gave thanks and broke them and gave them to his disciples to set before them. And they set them before the crowd. And they had a few small fish, and having blessed them, he said that these also should be set before them. And they ate and were satisfied. And they took up the surplus of broken pieces, 7 baskets. And there were about 4,000 people, and he sent them away. And immediately he got into the boat with his disciples and came into the parts of Dalmanutha.
And the Pharisees came out and began to dispute with him, seeking from him a sign from heaven and tempting him. And he groaned deeply in his spirit and said, Why does this generation seek a sign? Truly I tell you, no sign shall be given to this generation. And leaving them, he again got into a boat and went away to the other side. And they forgot to take bread, and except for 1 loaf, they did not have any with them in the boat. And he charged them, saying, Watch, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the leaven of Herod.
and they reasoned with one another, saying, It is because we do not have bread. And Jesus, knowing it, said to them, Why are you reasoning? Because you have no bread? Do you not yet perceive nor understand? Do you have your heart hardened? Having eyes, do you not see? And having ears, do you not hear? And do you not remember when I broke the 5 loaves for the 5,000? How many handbaskets full of broken pieces did you take up? They said to him, 12. And when I broke the 7 for the 4,000, how many baskets full of broken pieces did you take up? And they said, 7.
And he said to them, Do you not yet understand? And they came to Bethsaida, and they brought him a blind man and entreated him to touch him. And he took hold of the hand of the blind man and led him forth outside the village. And he spat on his eyes and laid his hands on him and asked him, Do you see anything? And he looked up and said, I see men, for I see them as trees walking. Then again he laid his hands upon his eyes, and the man looked intently and was restored. And he began to see all things clearly.
And he sent him to his house, saying, "Do not even enter into the village." And Jesus and his disciples went out into the villages of Caesarea Philippi, and on the way he questioned his disciples, saying to them, "Who do men say that I am?" And they told him, saying, "John the Baptist, and others, Elijah, but others, one of the prophets." And he questioned them, "But you, who do you say that I am?" Peter answered and said to him, "You are the Christ." And he charged them not to tell anyone concerning him.
And he began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders and the chief priests and the scribes and be killed after 3 days' rise. And he spoke this word openly. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. But turning around and looking at his disciples, he rebuked Peter and said, "Get behind me, Satan, for you are not setting your mind on the things of God, but on the things of men." And he called the crowd to him with his disciples and said to them, "If anyone wants to follow after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save his soul, life shall lose it, but whoever will lose his soul life for my sake and the gospel's shall save it."
For what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul life? For what could a man give in exchange for his soul life? For whoever is ashamed of me and of my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man also will be ashamed of him when he comes in the glory of his Father with the holy angels. 아멘. 예, 들어주셔서 감사합니다.